at the CRP trying something new here. We got, early in December, a CNN headline caught our eye, and it said that smart TV you just bought may be spying on you, the FBI warns. And that set off a whole chain of events here at the CRP. We're going to talk about the future because the future is here. This is the point where, the FBI is actually telling you, hey, be careful, that smart TV you bought may actually be able to do certain things for you. So I'm going to read to you from the CNN article, which appeared on December 3rd and was written by Josh Campbell. So, then we'll bring in Chad Wagner from the CRP here to go back and forth and do some commentary on this first podcast under the Futuristic Flights of Folly title I've given it tentatively as a working title here. So, and anyway, in a pre-holiday message to consumers, an FBI field office is warning that smart TVs, televisions equipped with internet streaming and facial recognition capabilities may be vulnerable to intrusion. Now, again, you got the FBI field office, just that, nothing more specific than that. In addition to outlining how new advanced technology features risk allowing television manufacturers and app developers to snoop on consumers, the Bureau says malicious cyber actors can also take control of unsecured smart TVs and potentially wreak havoc on unsuspecting owners. Next-gen smart TVs and devices run complex software, have internet connections, and often integrated sensors like microphones, says Matt Tate, a cyber security expert and former analyst at GCHQ, a British signal intelligence service. These features enable things like internet streaming services and voice commands, but can unfortunately be subverted by the hacker if the device gets compromised. At the low end of the risk spectrum, you can change channels, play with the volume, and show your kids inappropriate videos. In a worst-case scenario, they can turn on your bedroom TV camera and microphone and silently cyberstalk you. So, that's the gist of the article. Some frightening stuff there. And, we are here and in the future. The future is firmly now. I am joined by Chad Wagner of the CRP. Great to have you back.
Really good to be back.
And so you've been listening in on this stuff, and you've been getting on a personal level. You've been getting a slap in the face by modernity. The modern times here, as people mess with your farm and drones and things, and that's all a whole different aspect of this stuff. But when the FBI comes out, even if it's a random office, how give me your take on it, Chad.
Well, look, I think the first thing you have to do is you have to go back and look at Snowden and what happened with Edward Snowden. And he basically said, excuse me, not only are they spying on the entire country, but they're keeping every single aspect of that information. They're never getting rid of it, which was not supposed to be the case. We just had, 2 or 3 weeks ago, I guess, they passed a law to reconfirm part of the Patriot Act and allow them to continue to do that. And in my own personal experience, I'm growing hemp for the first time in Indiana in 75 or 80 years. So it's been a really big deal. So because of that, we're in what's called a research mode, and rather than just, it's a commercial mode and anybody can grow hemp. So because of that, initially I assumed that everything that I was witnessing just had to do with hemp, and that they were trying to monitor the situation and make sure people weren't growing marijuana or whatever the case may be. Since then, there have been drones everywhere. And when you tell this to people, they think you're completely nuts. And then you bring them out and you say, okay, come out at dark and stand on my deck with me and take the binoculars and look, and you will see that these are drones. They move in ways that that a plane can't possibly move. They're too quiet to be helicopters, and helicopters can't move like that either. And you'll hear things like, well, a drone can only stay up for 20 minutes and things like that. This is not the case with these. So there's something very different going on. And I think all of this winds up being connected. And I have to say this, I am generally speaking the farthest person from an actual conspiracy. I'll play along with it, but in general, I do not believe in conspiracies. I think 90% of the time it's just some kind of a bias, and they're looking to try and figure it out. And in this case, it's just not happening that way. It's totally bizarre. And then this thing comes out through CNN, and I mean, what do you do about this, Miguel? Where are you at with it?
Well, there are a couple of takes on it. You know what I mean? Because at the end of the day, it's, you know, pretty much since 9/11, I've accepted that the government is recording everything. You know, so if you send an extra text, you know, hey, you know, would a rated X picture to a friend and stuff, and just clog your lines and stuff like that. I encourage all that stuff. You know, let these guys, they want to get after me, they can sift through years of trashy conversations and enjoy it first. You know what I mean? Before they find anything of any value, because that's what I do on my text. You know, but at any rate, I've accepted that they've been taping everything. But the bottom line is that as an average Joe, at what point do you get susceptible to it? You know, you run the stereotypical, you run over a senator's kid, the world falls down on top of you. All of a sudden, yeah, they know everything about you, and you know they're embarrassing you at work, or you might lose your job. Your kids know, you know, what your secret habits are, and you know they can really mess with your lives. As an average Joe, how is that really going to affect me? You know, what could they want to turn on my TV that's in my bedroom? You know, I don't have a TV in my bedroom. There's one solution. You know, the FBI's, the CNN article actually says that you tape over put black tape over your cameras when they're not working or not being used and stuff like that. So the solutions are still simple. You got to be vigilant. You got to be careful, but you got to know that, yes, the potential is there. Because this is what happens is, also recently in the news, one of the major companies, I think it was Verizon, but I'm not, fresh right now, but somebody announced full 5G coverage in the United States across the board. Now, what's not Huawei or Huawei, they wanted that, right? And they were aiming for it across the world, but they didn't get a chance in the States, and that's what, a lot of the politics is about. But an American company now has it now. So the idea is Huawei might have a malicious intent. You know, if it's an American company that's really, transparent and stuff like that, you might be okay with them having some of your data or, all of your data or whatever it is. The problem there, though, is that does anybody really trust that those major companies aren't, in bed with some of the security agencies, the FBI types of things and things like that? Because, it's easy to act that way. I also don't know, exactly. I think you still got to be really sharp to spy on somebody with, hey, I know, Chad, you got a Huawei TV there or a Samsung real smart TV. They just put a tower up and you're ready to go. And I'm your neighbor. I still think you got to be a sharp cookie and download applications and softwares and things that, you got to really, it's not as it's not as easy as like, hey, you're spying on your neighbor in a minute. I don't know that it is. And I'd love for any of our viewers out there to fill me in on exactly how insidious this is. But the way I look at it is a lot of it the Pegasus software. Have you read about Pegasus?
A little bit, yeah, but go ahead and fill me in.
Okay, Mossad, or these Israeli companies, maybe they're private companies. They're not Mossad. Okay, yeah, I believe that, right? But the bottom line is the Israelis have developed the most insidious and powerful apps where they can actually control your phone and stuff, and actually make a phone call to you that you don't have to pick up, and that application still gets put on your phone and things. And it's from there that the exploratory, spying type of ideas come from. When it's agencies and powers like that are acting on it. So who gets access to that software? Who buys it? Who downloads it? Who uses it? If it has a private use, then you just got to multiply the scariness. You know what I mean? But
yeah, and in the information age, I mean, we all know that knowledge is power, and that information is far more important than, say, having a weapon or whatever the thing may be. We see it all the time in politics with people who had something happen. They did something stupid when they were 15 or 16, and it comes back to haunt them now. And you got to kind of wonder, I mean, where do we draw the line and say, that's just somebody being a dumb kid versus that's racist or sexist, or that's, something illegal, or whatever the case may be. There are so many complications to this. I don't even know where to begin. The entire process is huge. My dad said to me last night, and keep in mind, he's 70, almost 75 now, and he's sick and things like that. He said, I'm not buying a new TV, even though I need one, just because of what they said about TVs. And he said, I don't want to have to put tape over my TV. And I said, I'll be honest with you, I don't think that putting tape over your TV is going to do anything to help, if when it really comes down to it. If they want to know something, they're going to know it.
Right. As a 75-year-old man, the idea would be, they could turn on his camera and his television and stuff, but he's ill. They can also view him sleeping every single night. You know what I mean? It's like, if he doesn't have any insidious activity, then, this also becomes less of a risk like that. But paranoias and things like that. I think the true message here is the activation of the 5G stuff. Because here, in descriptions, and, you take China with a grain of salt, because they're communists still. From where they come from in the roots, we know they're going to have a tendency towards, oppressive means, by the way we look at it. You know what I mean? But
yeah.
At the end of the day, I don't know that, a modern, completely happy, connected Chinese person in Beijing feels that oppressed, But the bottom line is in order to get their license or anything like that, they've given a high-definition photo to the government for facial recognition, so that any of the billion cameras that the Chinese have in their country will recognize you at any point. Now,
and do they even know the difference?
Yeah. What's the matter?
Do they even know the difference? I mean, if you grew up in it, do you?
No, here's the thing: is their culture is a tendency of more to be like, a little bit more blend in too. You know what I mean? So it's like, for example, I guess, as a common thing, one of the examples I was reading on was maybe they jaywalk less. Maybe something. By they, I mean Chinese, Han Chinese from mainland China, right?
Right. Right.
So, so now you have a Chinese jaywalker. They're not very far from the thing saying, hey, that's so-and-so. We have his facial recognition. They can do it with a piece of your ear. Apparently, if you listen to the Hong Kong protesters.
What do you mean they can do it with a piece of your ear?
The picture is that they have, for facial recognition, the programs that are there don't need a complete facial shot or anything like that, apparently. If you listen to the Hong Kong protesters who are blocking their faces and using umbrellas to shield themselves from cameras and things like that, they put a high premium on covering everything up because they had to give up a picture of themselves in order to get their licenses and things. So China's way ahead because they've already got that info, and it's not like it's sitting in a file somewhere. It's actively being used. So the guy jaywalks, and you could get a ticket or a social score. It's like, you're a jaywalker. You get 90 on the social score, and everybody wants to see what's your active social score right now? Here, look at it. The other part, with China being very advanced, and the states very similar to stem cells, receiving resistance from the modernity is something that has been online currencies like Bitcoin and that sort of stuff.
Yeah,
a lot of resistance in the states towards that. The Chinese have laid the groundwork for that completely, which means at some point you jaywalk, hey, whoa, they just took the money's out of my account already. I got fined. There's no real limit. They know who you are. They can or jaywalk enough times and they shut your money off.
Right. Rather than put you in jail. Rather than put you in jail and spend the money on it, they just take your money.
All based on a social score that is constantly being updated. This is a potential Orwellian future for the Chinese. Now, there are a lot of hints that they're capable of doing that. And, with the power of the Chinese, when you have a population that's, more than 5 times ours. Listen to them describe now. They were very much followers before, but now they are trying to lead the way, and very actively so. And things that they're capable of doing, like, for example, they can go to the middle of China and to an empty spot and say, let's build a city the size of Chicago here and just leave it empty. But if we got to move people there, we got to train, test, anything like that. And there are cities like that throughout China where they can do mass testing on any sort of number of things. And that's the end state. Now, do I trust that the United States won't allow itself to be that way? That's a scary question. That's, I think, the reason for my podcast, because as an American, you would tend to say, no, we wouldn't do that, though. It won't get that bad. You can't cross. If you jaywalk, they're not going to send you a ticket 2 days later to your house or fine you from your account right off the bat automatically. That's just not the American way. You got to process, and we'll get in the way of that, right?
Yeah, I've got a weird story about that, though.
But that's what I was hoping you'd wave a flag, but before you do, my flag that should wave from here is the following: is we were talking about the fact that we know they tape everything already. And how did they put that one over on us? So how is it that I'm going to trust them now? So it is a really strange situation. I think everybody, has a way of sometimes letting inertia of life let them move forward and say, I didn't worry about that. I'm not too worried about that, or whatever. Now's the time to really stay on top of this stuff, because it's going to get very advanced very quickly. And the 5G network's coming on. The fact that, how long have you been able to buy a smart TV? At least 5 years that you can walk into Walmart and pick up
really 10.
Right. But now a warning, because the networks are starting. So that thing may have been sending a signal for 10 years since you bought it, but now there's actually a network out there that picks up that signal.
And saves it.
Yeah. And so it is a situation where it's time that people police and become a little bit more aware, especially if you consider yourself like your average Joe, like I do. This stuff I'm not going to ever worry about because it's just beyond me. Like I said, if they're going to try to turn the one eye in my bedroom, he can catch me resting every night. You know what I mean? It's like nothing going on. But it's still an insidious sign. And when you consider the models of what, people are accusing what China may become, they're pointing the finger at China in certain areas, but I'd like to point that finger back at ourselves and warn we could easily become that. They're recording everything already, so and that got put over on us by a whole conspiracy rigmarole that's engulfed us and destroyed our world over the last 20 years. So I'm scared.
I'd even go further to say that we're already there and just nobody really knows it yet. I really wasn't into the whole Edward Snowden thing. I didn't know much about it. I didn't pay much attention to it. I thought, well, the guy gave up information he shouldn't have given up. And if it's a matter of national security, then, surely there would be more to it. And there's just something that we don't know and they can't tell us.
Yeah, no.
After listening to him and understanding how all of that took place, that's a very scary subject. Because now you're looking at the idea of anything you've done anywhere in your life can come back and haunt you. And that in and of itself, and I kind of keep going back to the senator in, was it North or South Carolina, that he wore blackface for, I don't know, something stupid. I mean, it was a stupid thing to do, but he didn't mean anything by it. And he's been a great senator, and he has done an awful lot for minorities, according to his record and what I've heard and read. And yet they've wanted him to step down based on something that happened when he was, when he was a freshman in college or something like that.
Yeah,
so a lot of this stuff has been going on a lot longer than we think. And most of it started with the Patriot Act. or that's when it got solidified. So
Well,
the Patriot Act made it
that
legal.
was a sign. That was a sign that the public had, it was out there. The public had an ability to maybe at that point, shut it down with protest, some type of reaction. But it kind of was a blasé reaction, and they just put it over on you. And people didn't realize the full effects of the Patriot Act. They've renewed it, however many times since then, and each time it almost seems a little more insidious. I think you hit it right on the head. The bottom line is we may already be there, and I think that is very much the American way. I remember within my lifetime there was a scandal of like the Americans were spying on Germany's parliament, and it's like, yeah, the French do it. We spy on each other as well. Everybody does. It's in the way that they do it and stuff like that. But now this crosses over into the ability to spy on your own people, and that's what I'm talking about. The players who can actually, your smart TV sending out a signal, and now it's going to hit a network, so now it's active. But who can actually go in there and mine through all that massive quantity of information? Isolate all your details. Somebody who's a good somebody with software and programming and things like that. So I think it's still a situation where we have a lot of personal freedoms to lose to the government for that. Their ability to do that to anybody. We've been skipping around, but here's another very interesting piece of information as we talk about the future here, and that's the subject of quantum computing.
Once we start talking about AI,
but quantum computing is the specific one, because the quantum computing, if you have access to the average Joe has access to a quantum computer, which right now they don't. But if they do, a quantum computer in minutes will solve the highest end of encryption that we have on any other computer in minutes. So you can't encrypt anything if quantum computing goes mass, is in a mass scale. So they control, quantum computing. You don't walk into a quantum computing smoke shop and sit down and play quantum computing games and, chat and things like that in a quantum computer, because at this point they're going to lock down and you don't have access to it. So what? Still, somebody has access to it. They're going to be, hey, what do we do? Let's find Chad Wagner and see, his cell phone, his TV, his everything. Pull everything in. Let's see what he does. This guy is out in his freaking hemp field in his bathrobe at 2 a.m. shooting his shotgun. This guy's nuts.
Right. You look. Here's the situation. You have the right to protect yourself. In Indiana, you have the right to protect yourself, and that includes the use of lethal force if you have to. I would hate to ever have to do something like that. But when you have something on your property breaking into your barn to steal your crop, that totally changes the way you feel about everything. And then from there, I started to really pay attention, because before I was kind of like everyone else. I was just on autopilot and I really didn't know anything about it. Never thought about it, but just kind of thought, well, it's for bad people. It's for people who are terrorists and, people who are doing terrible things. And, I'm none of those things. So, what's the big deal? And then, I get into the hemp crop program, and all of a sudden, all these weird things start happening. And as a stargazer my entire life, I started to notice lights in the sky that just didn't belong there. And I challenge people to go out into darker areas. You're not going to see them in the city so much because the light pollution is so thick. But if you go out into a darker rural area and take a pair of binoculars, all you got to do is look at the lowest star, and 9 times out of 10, you're going to see it now. Why? What good does that serve? What can it possibly do? What's the point of all of it? It doesn't make any sense other than just kind of collecting information, I guess. It's totally privacy.
If you want to talk a little bit about your particular problem, again with could it be, that somebody the hemp looks enough like, narcotic marijuana? That may not be the right word, but whatever. That somebody wants to steal it so they can smoke pot.
Yeah, absolutely.
But now, wait, hold on. Now, I love a good conspiracy theory, and I'm making one up on the fly here but what if, somewhere, outside of Indianapolis was the fourth largest paper producing company or rope producing company in the United States, and they don't like anything to do with hemp being grown anywhere in Indiana anymore. And maybe
that's correct.
Maybe they could buy a couple of drones and hire a couple of guys for 30 grand a year to fly drones around and start saying, find out how much, and just start gathering information. And then at what point is that insidious? Is that, a corporation could do that,
Yeah, and we kind of already know that corporations sort of run the government here in the United States. I mean, that's just that is what it is. If you have enough money to lobby, you can pretty much get any law you want passed. And so Eli Lilly is a huge factor here in Indiana, and they clearly do not want people using, I don't know, naturally grown products when they can buy their product instead. And so, you got to figure that might be a part of it. I really don't know about all that.
At the end of the day, the information gathering, a corporation would have to cross a line, and that might also, there could be worse factors. You know what I mean? Who knows what other reasons? Other competitive farmers. Guy, I know that you've got a certain number of acres, and that you're an experimental program and stuff. But is there a guy who's sitting on about 8,000 acres over there going, with a calculator? You know what I mean? So it could be any one of those number of factors that leads, or all of them.
Yeah, and what I actually think it is I think it's a little bit of everything.
Yep.
So I think the initial thing that happened in my situation, for example, was that I think some kids probably saw this. They probably had drones. They were flying them around, and they went, "Hey, let's go get that." And it looks like it, because it looks the exact same thing as marijuana. It smells like it. It just has 0 THC. In fact, I just had mine tested again, and I have literally 0 THC in my crop. When I did that, a lot of the, I don't know, kind of weirdness that was going on in the skies out here sort of slowed down, and now you don't see as much of it.
It could also be maybe some legitimate police work, not maybe the local cops, but somebody who's vigilant over this new testing program and that sort of stuff. Maybe the university who's putting the program up has some type of, and in the modern times where you can literally, I'm in a Central American country, I can walk into a Best Buy type of store and for about $80 buy a drone with a camera.
Right. And, they can set those things up, and they can go anywhere and pretty much do it all on their own. They've got cameras that can zoom in. And I was so freaked out by it initially that I went to the police because I didn't know what else to do. And I'm just, I never would think about calling the police, but we literally live out here in the middle of nowhere where we can't count on protection from somebody. So it is, you have to protect yourselves. And I went to the police, and I had to go to 2 different departments because of 2 different counties. And I'm on the county line. And the one guy said, "Well, what's the difference?" And he took his flashlight out. He said, "What's the difference between this and this?" And he held the flashlight up in the air. He said, "They're both an invasion of your privacy." He said, "And if they're close enough to your property, the gray area is that you have the right, if you feel threatened, to use lethal force." And I said, "Well, I don't want to kill somebody, Jesus." And he said, "You may want to rethink that." He said, do you feel threatened? And I said, well, I mean, I'm here and I've never come to the police ever in my life. And here I am. And he said, you're threatening enough. You definitely
I see.
want to be armed. You definitely want to keep your eye out. So it's a really difficult thing to deal with. And now if you're talking about it's in your home and it's looking at you on your television, what do you do about that?
Yeah, because to me the potential is, and we're right at about a half hour, which is a good place to stop here in the next minute or so. But your situation with the drones will be the subject of our next podcast here at the CRP with the Triple F theme, which is Futuristic Flight Defiance. Because let me tell you, the pod, that stuff is very interesting. So now your TV is sending a signal. They could be flying a drone over your house to receive a signal and record that and come back and play what you just happened on your kids' TV, which they can also turn on and that sort of stuff. So if you're actually, getting down to business in your bedroom. Now, these are the types of things that's like, what's the end game of doing that? You're embarrassing somebody, you're putting someone over and stuff like that. When you're a victim of that, that's no game at all. You know what I mean? But there's still a childish end to it. But when you extrapolate all the way out through George Orwell and like Chinese, extrapolations of where they're heading, there's the potential for, you're an average Joe now, but, now because of hemp farming or whatever, somebody's taking an interest in you, and now you start to be victimized by this, and, your whole life can come apart, They mess with the stability of everything. And the type of stalking that can be done, is frightening. So, at any rate, I'm Miguel Dorati, and that's Chad Wagner. We are the CRP, and we are talking about the future, because the future's here. The CNN article dated December 3rd, which gave an FBI warning about how smart TVs could be spying on you in this day and age. It's finally here. People could be looking at you in your own bedroom, and you don't even know it. And that was the start of the conversation. We went several places, and we also selected our theme for our next one, which will be drones and the like. Any final words?
Good to me. Thanks for having me, Miguel. It's been a good time. I'll see you again soon.
Perfect. Talk to you in a minute.